Hi guys, I'm back again today with another video, and today we are checking out. I compared US and UK grocery prices to last year's. Here's what I found. So I'm intrigued because I don't live in US, I don't live in the UK. I'm in the middle, not necessarily in the middle. Am I in the middle? Philippines, UK, US, Philippines. I'm not even in the middle, to be honest. UK is in the middle. But anyways, still it's a middle perspective, like a neutral perspective. I want to see. So, anyways, beautiful people, I'm intrigued. So are you. So let's find out.
The cost of living just keeps going up. Feels like every time I'm out shopping for groceries, the price is so much higher than last time. But are things getting more expensive in the UK than the US? Let's head back to my studio and get to the
In
bottom
the
of things.
Philippines,
Hi, Evan
UK
Edinger
products
here,
are
US UK YouTuber
more
guy.
expensive.
About a year ago, I uploaded a video on this very channel comparing the prices of groceries in the US versus the UK, but a lot has happened since then. For instance, while the British pound has been struggling a lot, Brexit has completely thrown inflation in the UK into overdrive, and anecdotally, I swear my food shops are so much more expensive than they were last year. Now, you'll see a lot about inflation in the news, but it's really hard to visualize it except for when you get the receipt at the end of your weekly shop. And so, luckily for me and for you, I've got the exact prices of all the groceries that I used in my video last year, so now we can actually visualize just how much inflation is affecting the US and the UK, and see who actually is gonna come out on top this time. I'm gonna be going with the same rules as I did last year to keep it as similar as possible to avoid any unwanted variables entering the mix. That would be grocery. No. Just as last time, the UK brands we're going to be looking at are Sainsbury's and Tesco because they are mid-range. They're definitely not Waitrose, and they're definitely not Asda. In the US, again, I went with Acme and ShopRite because they're not Whole Foods up top and they're definitely not Walmart at the bottom. And if you've never heard of either of these, well, just know that Acme is owned by the same company as Kroger, Safeway, Albertsons. So if you're aware of that company, it's pretty much the same thing. Just the East Coast variant. In terms of the individual brands of items we'll be looking at, I again went with comparable, non-generic items. It is funny that the last video I uploaded, I had Brit sounding off going, he used the name brand stuff. It's actually not fair. There were a lot cheaper products. While I also had Americans going, whoa, he used some name brand stuff. I can't believe this. It's not fair. That is funny. Just give me the benefit of the doubt here that my goal here is to make it as one-to-one as possible. I have experienced life in both countries. I've shopped for groceries in both countries, and I'm very well aware of what products line up roughly in the quality range and the price range depending on what country you live in. So yeah. And the final way I made this comparison a comparison was to use Google Sheets' conversion algorithms to ensure that the weights of the items were normalized. So if one was in ounces, one was in grams, doesn't matter, the price is for the same exact weight of the same item. In terms of tax, most US states actually don't have sales tax on groceries. There are 13 that do, but I'm looking at groceries in New Jersey, which does not have sales tax on food, so that doesn't need to be taken into account. I've converted everything into pounds for Brits on the left-hand side, and I've converted everything into dollars for Yanks on the right-hand side. Without further ado, let's go.
At the dollars.
Can the US come out on top after last year's embarrassing defeat? Let us see. So, foodstuffs, our first category, an 800-gram loaf of bread. The UK price, £1 and 39 cents. Not too shabby. The US price, oh God, nearly 3 times more expensive at £4 and 8 pence. Ooh, sure, the UK is cheaper to buy a loaf of bread, but if we compare each country to how it was last year, well, it looks like the UK's inflation was nearly 16% for that loaf of bread, whereas the US's was nearly 10. This is not looking good. Now, my favorite items we're going to be looking at today are ones where the brand is the same in the US and the UK, because it removes just that many more extra variables, such as Quaker Oats, porridge oats, oatmeal, whatever you want to call it.
I buy this a
1
lot.
kilogram in the UK, pretty cheap breakfast. We're looking at a price of £2.30.
Here in the Philippines, that 1 kilogram is about 800 pesos for those type of oats too. Oh, one, no, one, no, 800. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. I don't know too much.
Whereas in the US, it's over double at £5 and 14 pence. However, another one where the US wins, the inflation, the price relatively went up, but not quite as much as the UK. Kellogg's Cornflakes, same brand, US and UK, easy to do this comparison. The UK bag of that dreadful cereal, we're looking at £2 and 25 pence. Whereas the US's equivalent price, holy crap, £5 43. However, the US is probably feeling bad right now. They're on the same trajectory as they were last year. But yet again, the UK has had a dreadful year for inflation, and it looks like, 1.48% for the US.
I know,
Wow,
I'm not the
that's not too
brightest
bad.
with
Most
numbers.
Americans probably aren't going to notice that very small increase in price for those Kellogg's cornflakes. But Brits, what? 12.5%. Oh, God. 10 times the rate of increase as the US's. Ugh. And here we go, a close one. A 500-gram bag of basmati rice. It is cheaper in the UK, but not by much, just under £3, whereas the equivalent is just over £3 in the US. Weirdly enough, the increase in price is pretty similar between the US and the UK, with around 16 to 17%. The UK actually snagging one for inflation for once. Hooray, it's still 16%. Now for 250 grams of name brand salted butter, the UK just squeaked by with another win, but if we look at the inflation, the US actually pays less for this butter than they did last year. What? I'm just surprised. I feel like everything has been going up, but the US somehow managed butter to pay a little less. Wow. Also, by the way, I did forget to mention, we're not looking at sale prices in any of these, just because I want to make sure it is fair between the countries. Doesn't matter if you're a club card member in either country, and also that way you can really see the inflation based on the retail price. As a bonus, Kerrygold is my favorite butter, and it is available in shops in the US and the UK, imported from Ireland. However, imagine buying your 250-gram block of Kerrygold butter and going, oh, £2.40. I can barely stomach this. I'm going to go back to margarine. Well, in the US, the equivalent is £4.10.
I'm still thinking about the oats. I feel like I got it wrong.
Puts a little perspective on it, doesn't it? Next up, 4 pints of whole milk. The UK is yet again 2 times cheaper than the US. But this is one where the price lock was enacted, and the price of milk has not gone up at all year over year in the UK, whereas it did experience a small increase in the US. For any Americans that are unaware, a lot of UK shops do things such as price lock to make sure that the price of some basics doesn't change over the course of multiple weeks, or they'll try and trick people into not going to Aldi or Lidl.
Yeah, I did get it wrong. I'm so dumb. It is actually 300. I don't know. I was thinking of something else. It's actually like 325 pesos or 300, let's say, pesos. Estimates less or more, depending on what shop. So that is about $1.50 pesos. So $3 and less or more, right? So 285 or 325, something like that. So I was wrong. Okay, it's not that expensive, because when I was doing the conversion in my head, when I say $6 a while ago, I was like, that it's too much. But yes, it's around 3 to 4. No, yeah, $3 and some cents. Sorry, let's go back.
Doesn't change over the course of multiple weeks, or they'll try and trick people into not going to Aldi or Lidl for the much cheaper basics by saying, we'll match whatever they have. And so because of this good competition, we actually have milk not going up in price. We win this one thing. Next up, 550 grams of cheddar cheese, and oh my God, yes, it's more expensive in the States, but the price of cheddar cheese in the UK has gone up by 20%. Oh God damn. Whereas in the US, the price has gone down by 10%.
How is this
They
happening?
do subsidize their cheese over there, but oh God, I do buy cheese, and this
dairy
is one thing that I have
US
noticed in a
like
huge differential in price in the last year. And for
on
the final
point.
one in this category, a dozen large
Talking about
eggs, in which
dairy.
the UK has finally received a loss. It is just a little bit cheaper to get comparable eggs in the US. Now, this was a narrow race because I made it really comparable, but from my experience in the UK, it's very difficult to find eggs that aren't free range, whereas in the US, you can expect to pay less than half of the price here if you do not care about that, because there are a lot of super tiny caged chickens eggs that you can get in the US. You don't have to shell out as much money, but, you know, cruelty and whatnot. Now, even though it wasn't in last year's video, I was going to add a 4-pack of Heinz beans because everybody in the UK always buys those every time they go shopping, right? But they're actually a lot more expensive in the US because we have better beans there. Heinz actually have to be imported, even though it's an American company based in Pittsburgh, hence the logo being a keystone for the Keystone State, Pennsylvania. They actually have to be imported from the Wigan factory in England to get their specific British
Heinz would be
formulation
like
of baked
European
beans
or
into the
something.
States, because no one in the States
thought it
really
was
enjoys
German,
the
to
taste
be
of Heinz
honest.
baked beans. So even though you can get a 4-pack in the UK for £3.75 this year, in the US at Walmart, the
Isn't
cheapest
Heinz-
store, $20. What?
$20?
Can you imagine spending £4 for 1 can of beans? No.
I mean,
Anyway, I didn't put that one in the
wouldn't know.
calculation because
don't buy a
I just
lot
don't
of
think that's
beans.
actually a fair comparison. But without further ado, that is actually the end of the first section. Moving on, we're going to go with fruits and vegetables. Now, before we move on to fruits and vegetables, I wanted to talk about how inflation is covered in the news. Because part of what I'm trying to do here is make inflation a bit more tangible. Because usually when we hear about it in the news, well, it's often highly politicized. Keeping inflation in check is a good thing no matter what side of the political spectrum you fall on. That being said, outlets can write about the topic in a different way that can help skew your perception of the issue one way or with the other. And that's why today's video sponsor, Ground News, is here to help solve that problem. For instance, if we look at the recent news that the UK's Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt ruled out tax cuts recently for fear of fueling inflation, Ground News allows us to see more of the full picture by seeing what side of the political spectrum is reporting on the news more, who owns each news outlet, and what exactly is being reported. It appears right-leaning sources got angry, and they write about a Tory tax rebellion. They're using very explosive language, as opposed to the left in this very specific case, in which they're reporting a bit more matter-of-factly about the tax cuts and inflation being high. Using Ground News, you can also see how the rest of the world is reporting on this news by changing your location to the US, Canada, or Europe. Ground News also makes it super easy to follow certain topics that you have an interest in and see how the rest of the world is reporting on that topic. By being able to see every side of each story, it really helps you make a more well-rounded view of the news of the world around you, and also helps you find common ground with those opposite you in your political spectrum. So if you want to check it out, go to ground.news/EvanEdinger and sign up for free today, or you can also use my link to get 30% off unlimited access to all the amazing features that I talked about in today's video. So without further ado, thanks Ground News for sponsoring, and let's get back to the prices. All right, fruits and vegetables. So onions, 95 pence for a kilogram versus the US, which is £3.64. Nearly 4 times more expensive for a kilogram of onions, but another one where the US's price has not increased at all this year, whereas the UK's has yet again. So as much as it must be nice for Brits to go, whew, at least it's not as expensive as in the US, no one's really thinking that. They're thinking, bloody hell, why am I spending so much more on onions? Onion enough. No, that's no. Yet again, tomatoes coming out with a resounding win for the States, and inflation for both countries was pretty minimal for tomatoes. Last year, pink lady apples were just a little bit more expensive in the UK than the US, and this year, the divide has widened yet again because
one apple in the Philippines is 25 pesos, so that is like 50 cents.
Inflation is affecting literally everything. Ooh. Now, bananas are a little bit more expensive in the States, but it seems like both countries absolutely had to deal with a very big increase in banana prices. The UK, again, 28% for the price of bananas. The US is dealing with 17, so that's high. But yet again, I think this is what we're seeing data with on the news, is that even though inflation might be high in other countries at some things, the UK's is like, hold my banana. Back to being a bloodbath, a kilogram bag of carrots is nearly 4 times more expensive in the US, but relative to last year, they're not really sweating, whereas the UK's is over 10% more expensive. And a similar story, raisins, same thing. The US's price went down, the UK's went up by about 9%. So even though it's a bit cheaper over here, what? Cucumber. Well, last year, this was a bit of a fair competition between the cucumbers. However, it's nearly the same price if you buy a cucumber in the US and the UK, because the price of a cucumber has gone up by 33%. What are you guys using your cucumbers for in the UK? What is going on? We're having a cuke shortage? What is happening? Oh my God, what happened to the price of canned tomatoes? The US's inflation was 12%, which is pretty high for them, whereas the UK's was 69%.
In our cuisine.
It's nearly double for a can of tomatoes? Buy them fresh, totally fine. Buy a can, almost double in the UK. Probably this time next year, when I upload my 3rd version of this video, we might just see the US come out on top for this and quite a few of these if inflation in the UK is just not fixed. We do have a general election next year. We might get the Tories out of office, so we might actually have a chance. And to think, they used to be the ones that were supposedly financially sound. They need to learn to read the room, all right? And finally, a bag of potatoes nearly 4 times more expensive in the US. However, we finally get an inflation win. Sure, the US has had a 0% for this one, but the UK's has gone down. So if you want to buy potatoes at your local supermarket, it's actually a little bit cheaper in the UK for once. Thank God. Live off potatoes. All right, that does it for the fruit and vegetable section. Moving on to the meats. Oh God. Ground beef, mince meat, whatever you want to call it. The UK is still cheaper to buy this. However, compared to last year's resounding win,
chicken,
the price of mince meat has gone up by 47%. This is a huge one that I've actually noticed when I've been shopping recently. I buy a lot of mince meat. I buy a lot of chicken breasts.
I don't know where America is getting their cows from, but I think they do have a lot of cow and chicken. Because when you look at their chicken products and their cow products, whatever you can get from those animals, they seem really cheap, and they keep going negative and negative. So yeah, maybe they have more of those animals to produce more of those products. That's why it's less. But maybe UK's stock market. Their markets for like animals, or making those products are not necessarily high in the country. Maybe they are focused on other resources. That is why it's more expensive there.
that just feels like my shop is just so much more expensive than it used to be, and I think it really does come down to the meats. Let's see what happens with chicken breasts. 650 grams of chicken breasts, we're looking at £5.33 in the USA and £4.75 in the UK. So yeah, in terms of inflation, yet again, US's price stayed the same, whereas the UK's has gone up by 13%. God damn. Smoked bacon, another one where it's a little bit more expensive in the US, and
US
inflation has caused the UK's to go up by a little bit. I pretty much have sausages, either Cumberland or Lincolnshire, every single day for breakfast, so I've definitely felt this one. Yes, it's more expensive for sausages in the US. However, their price has gone down by about 10%, whereas the UK's has gone up by 24%. God! The price of tuna has stayed the same in the US, whereas in the UK it's up by 42%. Still cheaper than the US, but I don't think anyone's caring about that anymore. And finally with salmon fillets, we actually see a resounding inflation win with the UK. Hooray for 5% compared to the US's 21.8.
Maybe UK is more to the sea life, right? Or maybe they live close to countries that import to the UK for cheaper, and then US probably don't really do a lot of fishing, right? Or they're not like focused on the fishing market. They're more into like the livestock and farming vegetations, right? So that's where, okay, I think I would like the UK just because, no, but then it's cheap in the US though. But then I do love my fish. But anyways.
That's it for the meats and all the groceries, really. It's time to see the totals. If you were to buy all these items in the UK this week, the price would put you back £58.11, whereas in the US, you are paying £92.41. That is yet again over 50% more expensive for a shop. However, when we compare it to last year's shop, the US's equivalent is an inflation rate of 2.97%. That's not bad. However, and here's where the rough part is, if we look at the UK's inflation, we're looking at 16.26%. If you bought each of these items last year and each of these items this year, that's disgusting. That's really rough. The fact that salaries haven't been raising in the last year by 16%, if you haven't received a 16% raise in this 1 year alone, you would be losing money over last year. That's disgusting. This is so bad. And yes, I did try and keep everything as one-to-one as last time, but this also isn't accounting for the fact that some of these brands are going out of their way to participate in shrinkflation. For instance, Sainsbury's for the chicken breasts are charging more and giving you 10 grams less. And you'll see that across lots of different products. For instance, I know Lurpak is doing that. They're now like, oh, you're used to 250 grams? How's 200? But pay the same price. No. Here's a spreadsheet of all the results and everything that I uncovered this year. And yeah, it's just a lot more annoying seeing these numbers physically as opposed to just in my own head of going, oh, that's weird. I never have to spend that much money when I go to the shops every single time. So even though groceries are still cheaper to buy in the UK, that might change year over year, depending on how bad inflation is and how far the UK government lets that slip. Either way, I really like this series, and I will be doing another one next year. I did a video comparing the prices of Aldi's last year, but that one didn't necessarily hit as much as the standard mid-range that I'm doing right now, so I don't know if I'll do a version 2 of that. Depends on if anyone is actually interested. Otherwise, I have a lot of videos that I've pre-filmed that'll be going out in the next couple weeks, even though I'm moving to Berlin for a month, so hooray! If there's any German-centered content you'd like to see, please leave me a comment and I will look into it. In the meantime, comparisons is pretty much the main thing I do on my YouTube channel, so if you're interested in watching other interesting comparisons between the US and the UK, I'll leave a little playlist right here for you to watch to your heart's content. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel, and hopefully I'll see you here for my new video next Sunday. Goodbye. Oh, also, tell me what you think of this new setup. 2 cameras, right? Engaging. The UK won this battle again, but don't be sore. Americans will probably win the war.
Okay, that was interesting. Obviously, compared to the two places, Philippine products are close to American prices, obviously, because our third world situation, right? I mean, for a third world country to have close products to America is insane. Like, imagine buying an oat for almost the same price. Let me go back to that and see how much they pay for their oats. Okay, they're paying $7, and let me just, you know, let's say 325 PHP to USD. Okay, I don't know how to do math because it's $5.84. cents. And I told you a while ago what three, I don't know to math, okay? I was closer the first time actually. So it's crazy.